want all survivors released!
We want all survivors released!
She was 8 months pregnant. Her attorneys say her boyfriend attacked her and that she used deadly force to protect herself. But prosecutors charged her with first-degree murder, and then came a plea offer that could have allowed her to avoid prison. But Keshia Golden rejected the deal. When people do the most, I do the analysis. Let's go. 2 years of probation. All she reportedly had to do was plead guilty to second-degree murder. But instead of accepting a conviction, Keshia Golden is preparing to take her self-defense claim before a jury. And even throughout all this, her attorneys are still pushing prosecutors to drop the murder charges entirely. So what happened? How did Keshia end up in this situation? Let's listen in.
We're told Keshia Golden was 8 months pregnant when her attorney says her boyfriend attacked her and she defended herself by stabbing him in the leg. Well, it's out of that self-defense that her supporters are demanding that Cook County State's Attorney Eileen Berg drop all charges in her case, which include murder.
We want all survivors released!
We want all survivors released!
A rally around the block in the name of judicial freedom for Keshia Golden.
She reached for a knife to protect herself from her abuser, who was trying to kill her and her unborn child.
Was this a pregnant woman defending herself during a violent attack? Or were prosecutors convince the jury that the killing was not legally justified? Because on August 24th, this case is scheduled for trial, and the stakes couldn't be higher.
Golden's attorney, Julie Kohler, says in October of 2023, Golden was 8 months pregnant with her only child. During her baby shower, they say her boyfriend at the time, Calvin Sidney, attacked her.
Hit her, grabbed her hair, slammed her head down on a kitchen counter, and the fight was then dragged into another room. Keshia grabbed a knife and stabbed him in the leg.
According to case documents, the knife struck Sidney's femoral artery. He was then taken to the hospital where he later died. Golden was charged with murder.
Today we're discussing the first-degree murder case against Chicago woman Keshia Golden, who is charged in the 2022 death of her then boyfriend, her child's father, Calvin Sidney.
ABC 7 asked the Cook County State's Attorney's Office if they plan to drop the charges against Golden. The office gave this statement saying, quote, the defendant previously rejected the state's offer to resolve this case, which included a plea to a reduced charge of second-degree murder with no additional time served. As this case remains pending litigation, we are unable to comment further at this time.
Keshia Golden's defense team says that she acted in self-defense after Calvin Sidney attacked her while she was around 8 months pregnant.
Documents show 5 police reports of domestic violence between Golden and Sidney were filed before the day of the murder, something Golden's supporters say should have received more attention.
He choked her while she was 18 weeks pregnant, so there's lots of documentation, and I wish there had been more intervention at those earlier stages.
Every day we'll resist!
Now, if the charges are not dropped and this case does go to trial, Golden's attorney says that the trial is expected to start sometime this summer.
But this case has taken a lot of major turns since his death. And one of the most surprising developments is that Keshia Golden was offered a plea agreement that would have required her to serve 2 years of probation for second-degree murder. That's right, probation after ending the life of another human being. But she rejected it. And now the case is headed to trial.
Justice is not ignoring a woman cries for help until it's too late, and then condemning her for surviving.
According to the latest court update, Cook County Judge Stephen Watkins scheduled Keshia's trial to begin on August 24th. Keshia Golden is charged with first-degree murder in connection with the 2022 death of her child's father, Calvin Sidney. But her attorneys aren't arguing that this was an accident. They're saying that Keshia Golden intentionally used force, but that the force was legally justified because she was defending herself during an alleged attack.
Golden is facing first-degree murder charges in the death of her then-boyfriend, Calvin Sidney.
According to Golden's attorney, Sidney had dragged Golden by her hair and she was forced to stab him in the leg when family members couldn't pull them apart during their argument. Her attorney says Golden acted in self-defense to protect her and her unborn baby, not knowing she hit an artery in Sidney's leg. Her attorney adds that Golden had previously miscarried after she was physically abused by Sidney. Police also tell us there have been over 50 calls made from the couple's home to report abuse. 5 of them were reported between June and September of 2022. And in 4 of those calls, Golden claimed Sidney had choked, punched, slapped, or pushed her. Her attorneys will be back here at Layton Criminal Courthouse seeking to dismiss any charges against her, really putting that self-defense at the center of that argument.
And the fact that she was 8 months pregnant is expected to be a major part of that defense. Because when we talk about self-defense, the legal question isn't just did someone die? The question is, was the use of deadly force legally justified under the circumstances? And according to attorneys, this is exactly the type of situation that self-defense laws were created to address. Attorney Keenan is the assistant public defender representing Keshia Golden in her Chicago murder trial. Attorney Keenan has stated, "We believe Ms. Golden had the right under the law and that the law exists for self-defense for these exact situations." Now that's a powerful statement, but it's also a legal position that's going to be tested against the evidence.
Keshia was abused by her partner the night of her baby shower. This wasn't the first time. There was a history of domestic violence between the two of them, and she called the Chicago police at least 50 times prior to this incident.
The reality is that Keshia has been a survivor the entirety of her life. We have normalized family-based and gender-based violence in our society to the degree that this is what feels normal.
Oftentimes, that's what witnesses tell me. They're just afraid. And I know that Keshia is afraid, and I know exactly what she's afraid of. She's afraid of not being there to raise her child.
She loves her daughter so much, and that's what her world revolves around. Ultimately fighting this case for her so that she can provide a better future for her daughter.
Keshia Golden has been out on bail and living with her daughter since 2022. Her daughter is now 3 years old, and prosecutors and advocates agreed that Golden could be released in part because she was pregnant. But she was required to check in with a judge every day by phone. Some people were surprised that Keshia Golden is currently facing a first-degree murder charge, but being released while a case is pending is not the same as being found innocent, and is certainly not the same as charges being dismissed. Pretrial release is about whether a defendant remains in custody while the case moves through the court system. The criminal case itself continues toward trial. Keshia has remained out of jail while her attorneys have continued fighting the murder charge against her. Those attorneys have spent years trying to prevent this case from ever even reaching a jury. But now, the trial is scheduled, and the plea offer no longer exists. Prosecutors offered Keshia Golden an agreement that would have required her to plead guilty to second-degree murder and serve 2 years of probation. Just think about what that means. Keshia Golden is currently charged with first-degree murder, one of the most serious criminal charges under Illinois law. Yet the reported plea offer would have allowed her to avoid a prison sentence altogether unless she violated the terms of her probation. But there was a condition, though. She would have to accept a conviction on her record for second-degree murder. And Keshia's attorneys flat out rejected the offer from the prosecution. Her attorneys argued that a conviction could still carry serious long-term consequences, including possible effects on employment, opportunities, and financial assistance. So even though the proposed agreement didn't include any prison time, it still would have left Keshia Golden with a serious criminal conviction on her record. And apparently that wasn't an outcome that the defense was willing to accept. Instead, Keshia's legal team appears to be standing firmly behind the argument that she acted lawfully in self-defense. Now, that's one heck of a gamble, if I must say so myself. And I wonder if Keshia would make the same decision if she wasn't already out on pretrial release. All I'll say about that is Keshia Golden must have total confidence in her judgment and that of her legal defense team. Rejecting a plea offer is a major decision. We can't deny that, because a plea agreement can provide certainty. The defendant knows the proposed charge and she knows the proposed sentence, and the case can be resolved without the uncertainty of a jury trial. A trial is different. At trial, the outcome is no longer guaranteed. Keshia Golden could be acquitted if the jury concludes that her actions were legally justified. But if the jury rejects the self-defense claim and finds that the state proved first-degree murder beyond a reasonable doubt, Keshia Golden could face a much more serious outcome than the probation agreement that the prosecutors offered. She could potentially spend the rest of her life behind bars. And that is the risk that she's currently facing. But from the defense's perspective, accepting a plea could also mean giving up the opportunity to argue that Golden should not have been convicted of any homicide offense at all. And that appears to be the heart of the defense's position. They're not just asking for a lesser punishment. They're continuing to argue that Keshia Golden had a legal right to defend herself and that the charges should be dismissed.
From her abuser.
Keshia Golden's attorneys have continued putting pressure on prosecutors to drop those charges even as the case moves toward trial. They're not saying Keshia Golden did something wrong, but she deserves a lighter sentence. Their position is that Keshia Golden acted in self-defense and she should not be criminally convicted for protecting herself. But prosecutors haven't dropped the case. Instead, Keshia Golden remains charged with first-degree murder. And after 4 years of waiting, the trial is now scheduled to begin. That means the disagreement between the state and the defense may ultimately have to be resolved by a jury. The jury is going to have to examine questions like, what happened immediately before Calvin Sidney was killed? Was Keshia being physically attacked? What evidence supports or challenges the defense's version of events? Did Keshia reasonably believe that she faced an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm? Did the fact that she was 8 months pregnant affect the level of danger that she reasonably believed she faced? And finally, was the force that she used legally justified under the circumstances? Those questions can't be answered solely by the fact that Keshia Golden was pregnant. But her pregnancy could be highly relevant to the jury's understanding of the physical circumstances that she allegedly faced. Just think about that. A woman who's 8 months pregnant would have different physical vulnerabilities, if you will, mobility limitations, and concerns than someone who's not pregnant. And if the defense presents evidence that Keshia Golden was attacked, then her physical condition might become a central part of the self-defense argument. But the prosecution is going to have the opportunity to challenge that. The state might present evidence and arguments intended to show that the use of deadly force was not legally justified. And ultimately, the jury's going to have to determine what happened based on the evidence that's presented in court, not simply based on headlines or public opinion. There's another point that I want to make here. A self-defense claim is not an admission of murder. The defense is going to acknowledge that Keshia Golden caused Calvin Sidney's death while arguing, but that the killing was legally justified. And if the jury accepts the legal defense, Keshia Golden could be found not guilty, and she'll walk away with a clean record. But if the jury rejects the self-defense claim and finds that the state proved first-degree murder beyond a reasonable doubt, Keshia Golden would then be convicted of murder in the first degree. And depending on the evidence presented in court and also the instructions given by the judge, the jury could potentially be asked to consider other legally supported outcomes. We'll just have to wait and see exactly what evidence is introduced and what jury instructions are given. I'll be sure to keep y'all updated. This case also has a serious personal aspect to it. Keshia Golden was 8 months pregnant when the killing occurred. She was very close to delivering that baby. And since then, she's been living with and raising her daughter, all while this case remained unresolved. Now, years later, she's preparing to go to trial while facing a first-degree murder charge. Keshia Golden and her attorneys, they got to believe strongly that a conviction, even for a lesser offense, would be inconsistent with their position because they believe that she acted lawfully in self-defense. But there's just so much uncertainty with the jury trial. And once the trial actually begins, the attorneys, they're going to have to present evidence, not just legal arguments. The defense is going to have to persuade the jury that Keshia Golden's actions were justified. And the prosecution is going to have to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt that Keshia Golden had other options, that this was one of numerous times the police had been called to that address for domestic violence, and that Keshia's life nor the life of her unborn child was in imminent danger. So to summarize before I close, as Keshia Golden's August 24th trial approaches, this is where the case stands. You have a Chicago woman that's charged with first-degree murder in the 2022 death of her boyfriend, who was also the father of her unborn child. Her attorneys say that she acted in self-defense after he allegedly attacked her while she was 8 months pregnant. Keshia Golden has been out of jail and living with her now 3-year-old daughter since 2022. Her attorneys spent years fighting to prevent the case from going to trial. Prosecutors offered a plea agreement involving 2 years of probation for second-degree murder. Keshia Golden rejected the deal. And now her attorneys are continuing to push for the charges to be dropped, even as the case moves toward a jury trial. So the question is no longer just, did Keshia Golden kill Calvin Sidney? The serious legal question remains, was she legally justified in doing so? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who can use this message. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and leave a comment down below letting me know your thoughts. Does suggesting a plea deal involving probation suggest that Golden and her attorneys are confident in their self-defense case? Or do you believe rejecting the deal creates a major legal risk when she's facing a first-degree murder charge? Meet me in the comments. We can continue the conversation there.